In a royal family that thrives on secrecy and tradition, even the slightest tremor can trigger a media earthquake. But this was an all-out storm. Just 5 minutes ago, Prince William stepped forward, visibly shaken, to confirm what insiders feared, but no one dared to speak aloud. The future of Princess Beatrice, once a royal wildcard, now lies in uncertainty. The silence inside Buckingham was deafening. What could have happened behind those locked doors? Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. The cameras had barely started rolling when the palace gates creaked open, and the Duke of Cambridge, usually composed, confident, and ever strategic, appeared with none of the polish expected of the future king. The statement wasn't read by a press secretary, nor released through the usual royal channels. William took the moment for himself, signaling not just urgency but weight. His voice, laced with emotional restraint, delivered a few short lines that felt heavier than the marble pillars behind him. "Circumstances have changed," he said, irreversibly. And then, as quickly as he arrived, he vanished back behind the veil of the monarchy's towering walls. Inside sources reveal chaos erupted in the palace just minutes before his appearance. Aides were seen rushing through corridors, papers clutched tightly, phones buzzing non-stop, yet the outside world had no hint of what was coming. It was clear. No leaks were allowed this time. This was not just another reshuffle or symbolic gesture. This was something bigger, something carefully controlled, measured like a chess move on the edge of checkmate. Beatrice's name, only briefly mentioned, carried with it the full weight of erasure. Not just from public duty, but from a future that had always seemed quietly promised to her. What could possibly warrant such a dramatic, personal statement? Some say it wasn't just about Beatrice. It was a message to the entire royal line, a clear line being drawn between the new generation of strategic royals and those left tethered to controversy, legacy, or threat. The language used, "irreversible circumstances," has sent shockwaves through royal analysts, suggesting either an internal breach, an unrecoverable scandal, or a deliberate removal engineered for optics. And yet, no details were given. Not one thread offered for public clarity. It was as if William wanted the silence to speak louder than truth. The absence of leaks is more telling than the statement itself. This royal family, long plagued by internal whispers and insider betrayals, suddenly locked shut just before the blow. It implies premeditation, not just in the announcement, but in the orchestration of its silence. And while the public scrambled for answers, the press froze, caught off guard for the first time in years. No advance notice, no embargoed statements, no predictable pattern, only confusion and dread, echoing from the front gates of Buckingham to every screen across the country. But beyond the shock of the message lies a deeper fracture, an unspoken war brewing between generations. Palace watchers have noted the recent uptick in visible tension between William and King Charles. From veiled glances during events to conflicting statements made by their offices, it was clear that something beneath the surface had been festering. The decision to sideline Beatrice, announced by William alone without Charles or Camilla present, feels like a declaration of independence, even defiance. And so, the nation is left with more questions than answers. What happened to Princess Beatrice's future? Was this a punishment, cloaked in protocol, or a sacrifice demanded by shifting royal power? What we know for certain is that William has drawn a line in the sand. The monarchy, as we know it, has changed in an instant, and Princess Beatrice, once hidden but never forgotten, now finds herself standing on the edge of royal exile. But to understand the weight of this moment, we must peel back the layers of history, rivalry, and a web of royal decisions that led to this unraveling. From her earliest steps into royal life, Princess Beatrice was a mystery the crown never quite solved. Intelligent, emotionally complex, and relentlessly loyal, yet always on the margins. Was she kept in the shadows by accident or by deliberate design? What if her fate was sealed years before anyone realized? Born into a lineage already haunted by controversy, Beatrice never had the luxury of a clean slate. Her childhood, though cloaked in royal privilege, was burdened by her parents' public scandal and the weight of expectations she never asked to carry. The press watched her not with admiration, but with a cautious lens, unsure whether to embrace her as a symbol of modern royalty or dismiss her as collateral damage in a collapsing legacy. While other royals flourished under curated images and media handlers, Beatrice often stood without a script, genuine, unscripted, and painfully real. That authenticity both drew people in and kept the palace at arm's length. As she matured, public perception wavered. One moment she was the awkward teenager in extravagant hats, and the next she was being hailed as the unsung hero of royal charity work. But behind palace gates, there was a different narrative unfolding, one that rarely made headlines. Beatrice, though eager to serve, was quietly excluded from key royal strategy meetings. Her voice seldom requested and rarely heard. Even her successful endeavors were met with muted praise from within, as if her efforts were tolerated, not celebrated. The same establishment that once paraded her on balconies now offered only half smiles behind closed doors. Beatrice's dual identity, fiercely dutiful, yet fiercely independent, presented a dilemma to those shaping the monarchy's future. She wasn't easily molded, she questioned, she cared deeply, and she didn't conform. These weren't traits discouraged in modern leaders, but within the royal firm, they posed a threat to tradition. After Queen Elizabeth's passing, the tone shifted even more sharply. The old matriarch had been Beatrice's quiet supporter, occasionally drawing her into private counsel and offering wisdom behind the scenes. But with her gone, the warmth that had once shielded Beatrice evaporated. In its place came a colder, corporate version of monarchy, streamlined, efficient, and increasingly selective about who belonged. What many failed to see were the subtle signs that Beatrice's place was being slowly erased. Her invitations to high-level briefings were quietly rescinded. Her patronages were reassigned under the guise of modernization. Public appearances became sporadic, and her presence at major family events began to feel more symbolic than strategic. And yet, through it all, Beatrice said nothing. She smiled, waved, fulfilled her duties, and remained silent as the walls moved in around her. But silence doesn't mean blindness. Deep down, Beatrice sensed the shift. She knew the patterns. She understood the silence of a palace more than the words it offered. And still, she hoped that loyalty would outweigh legacy, that her years of quiet service would matter when it counted. She never expected that the very family she loved would choose visibility over value, and as the public tried to piece together the fragments of what William's announcement truly meant, Beatrice had already lived its shadow for years. And then came the moment everything changed, not in public view, but in a private, fiercely guarded meeting between William and the inner circle. They met under candlelight in the old strategy chamber at Windsor Castle. No press, no phones, no official record. Only whispers made it out. But what took place in that sealed room would trigger the very downfall of a princess's future. The summons had gone out hours before dawn, cloaked in the guise of a routine internal council. But those close to the palace knew this wasn't routine, it was an emergency. Senior royals, trusted advisors, and legal minds were rushed in through private entrances, briefed on arrival, and mad. To sign confidentiality orders. The name at the center of every document, Princess Beatrice. Inside the chamber, the atmosphere was thick with apprehension. Prince William, now increasingly the de facto head of the monarchy's forward strategy, took his place at the head of the table. King Charles arrived late, his presence cold, calculated. And seated a few chairs away, silent but observant, was Queen Camilla. Tension pulsed in the room like static before a storm. Conversations were clipped, expressions unreadable. But when Beatrice's name was officially introduced into the discussion, something fractured beneath the surface. Those present say it wasn't just strategy being debated. It was survival of legacy, image, and the tightly controlled direction of the monarchy's future. One voice reportedly rose in pointed resistance: Camilla's. She questioned Beatrice's growing popularity, her independent connections, her refusal to conform. It wasn't framed as a personal grievance, but rather as a strategic concern. Camilla, some say, warned that Beatrice's unpredictability could cast long shadows over the tightly curated image they had spent years rebuilding. And although Charles listened in silence, The glance he shared with William was enough to shift the direction of the room entirely. The decision was never going to be democratic. It was going to be surgical. Conspicuously absent from the chamber was Beatrice herself. No invitation was extended, no voice allowed in her own defense. Sources close to the household say this exclusion was not an oversight, it was intentional. A quiet statement that her fate had already been decided before the first chair was pulled out. The final blow came in the form of a dossier, slid across the table in a crimson folder. Its contents, still shrouded in mystery, are believed to include correspondence, behavioral analyses, and a summary of past deviations from protocol. Whatever was inside, it was enough to change everything. As the hours dragged on, voices faded into murmurs, and decisions hardened into resolutions. Then, in the final moment just before the room was dismissed, William rose alone. No longer seeking consensus, he looked around the room and said just 6 words that sealed the course ahead. Then it must be done. Now. There was no applause, no objection, just silence. And in that silence, a princess's future was quietly erased from the walls of power. But while William gave the final word, the seeds of Beatrice's fall were planted long ago by someone far closer than anyone expected. Every royal downfall has a betrayer, someone smiling in public but wielding a knife in silence. For Beatrice, the blow didn't come from her enemies, it came from someone she trusted more than anyone. The betrayal wasn't just personal, it was strategic. The bond between Beatrice and her younger sister Eugenie had always been considered unbreakable. They were often seen as each other's shadows, 2 halves of a single royal figure. Who had endured scandal, scrutiny, and survival together. But those who watched closely began noticing a strange shift, one that unfolded slowly, deliberately, and far from the cameras. Eugenie, once her fiercest ally, had begun to pull away. It started subtly. Fewer shared public appearances, shorter statements when asked about her sister, increasing absences from family engagements where Beatrice was present. Royal aides whispered that it wasn't due to logistics or timing, it was personal. And then came the murmurs from inside the palace that Beatrice had begun to voice concerns behind closed doors. She had allegedly grown uncomfortable with the growing influence Queen Camilla exerted over royal charity boards, including ones previously championed by Beatrice and supported by late Queen Elizabeth. Beatrice's frustrations reportedly found no audience, but someone was listening and passing those thoughts along. Soon after, private details of Beatrice's conversations began leaking into the press. Her words, twisted and weaponized, appeared in headlines and anonymous palace insider columns. At first, it was chalked up to routine tabloid speculation, but as the leaks grew more specific, more accurate, and more damaging, suspicion turned inward. Palace communications staff initiated an internal inquiry. It didn't take long for the pattern to point toward a source shockingly close to Beatrice's own inner circle. Trusted family member was the phrase that surfaced in hushed briefings. What followed was a revelation that stunned even those inside the firm. Eugenie had been holding quiet, unscheduled meetings with Camilla. While not unusual on the surface, the context sent shockwaves through palace corridors. Camilla, who had grown wary of Beatrice's perceived autonomy and unpredictable nature, was now meeting with her sister, who had everything to gain if Beatrice were pushed aside. No documents were signed, no obvious deals struck. Alliances in the royal household don't need contracts. A single whisper can set the course for an entire dynasty. And one whisper, captured by a royal staffer and passed up the chain, was said to have broken Beatrice entirely. She doesn't belong in the next generation. In the days leading up to Prince William's public confirmation, Beatrice vanished from view. No public engagements, no press photos, no activity on royal correspondence. Those closest to her described her retreat as emotional exile. She had seen the writing on the walls. She had felt the sting of betrayal not from enemies or distant figures, but from the one person she believed would always protect her. And yet, she remained silent, allowing the palace machine to carry out what had already been set in motion. But even betrayal wasn't enough to push her out, not until one royal document surfaced and turned her royal identity into a liability. Buried in the pages of Queen Elizabeth II's final codicil, a clause long believed to be ceremonial held a devastating revelation. It named successors, restrictions, and one stunning line that removed Beatrice from a future role she had been silently preparing for all her life. When the Queen passed, the codicil, an intimate legal extension to her last will, was archived, reviewed only by a tightly controlled legal circle within the palace. It was presumed to be filled with ceremonial directives, small personal wishes, or charitable bequests. But what emerged during a discreet legal audit held just days ago would become the smoking gun in a drama no one had predicted. Inside the codicil was a line previously redacted from the public version that sent shockwaves through the monarchy: shall not be considered for future duties unless unanimously agreed upon by direct heirs. This line, cold and surgically worded, was more than a legal formality. It was a judgment. It singled out Beatrice by name in the original draft, a name later stripped from the public summary in what many now believe was a palace cover-up. The implication was staggering. Queen Elizabeth herself had placed a hidden limitation on Beatrice's royal future. And while some advisors scrambled to interpret the clause as symbolic or precautionary, William and his legal team saw it differently. They saw it as final, and they moved quickly, demanding its immediate enforcement before the public or press could catch scent of what it truly meant. Even more unsettling were the marginal notes found in the Queen's own hand. Scrawled in delicate, slanted writing beside the clause were the words "for the good of the crown," and one simple, haunting phrase: "Trust must be earned, not assumed." Those who had spent decades by the Queen's side were stunned. While she had always appeared gracious toward Beatrice in public, this hidden instruction revealed a long-held private concern. What had the Queen seen or feared about Beatrice's future? Had she been swayed by palace whispers, or was this a verdict shaped in solitude by a monarch preparing for the chaos that would follow her death? The timing of the audit's release was no coincidence. With internal tensions peaking and external scrutiny mounting, palace lawyers knew they needed legal justification to cement Beatrice's removal. The codicil provided it. It was a royal dagger wrapped in parchment, and once William had it in his grasp, he didn't hesitate. According to those present during the final Windsor meeting, he stood firm in enforcing it, stating, "The Queen made her choice. I will honor it." No appeals were heard, no amendments considered. The clause became law, and with it, Beatrice's quiet ambition was extinguished in full daylight. Outside the palace walls, speculation ran wild. Was the clause inserted at Queen Elizabeth's urging, or was it influenced by advisors seeking to shape the monarchy into a leaner, more media-savvy machine? Some royal commentators believe the clause may have been a failsafe, a way to prevent emotional decisions by future monarch. Others argue it was targeted sabotage from within the firm, packaged in the name of duty. But regardless of origin, its enforcement was swift and public. The codicil alone could have sparked crisis, but it was what William did next that sealed Beatrice's fate in the public eye. It wasn't a decision made in cold calculation, it was a battle between blood and duty. Prince William, known for his steady hand, was visibly fractured. Those closest say he wept after reading the codicil. But in the end, the crown came first. At what personal cost? This was never just about protocol or power. It was about a man forced to draw a line through his own bloodline, knowing that history would remember him not just as a future king, but as the one who turned his back on family for the sake of the institution. William and Beatrice had shared more than titles. They shared a childhood marked by chaos, loss, and the relentless pressure of a royal name. They had been allies in private, bonded not by politics, but by pain. To stand before the very mechanisms that once shaped their youth and be told to sever that bond was something no crown could ever make right. Behind closed doors, William was torn. The pressure had reached a boiling point. Advisors warned him that Beatrice's inclusion in future royal responsibilities would complicate the palace's long-term strategy. The goal, they insisted, was clarity, a monarchy that felt modern, trimmed, and palatable to a younger global audience. They wanted no lingering links to outdated controversy, No threads of unpredictability. A cleaner, younger line they repeated like a mantra until it became a campaign. And Beatrice, despite her loyalty, was labelled excess. Not because she had failed the crown, but because she no longer fit its evolving silhouette. Even Catherine, known for her quiet strength and instinct for diplomacy, chose not to intervene. She reportedly held her silence, offering no resistance, no support, only understanding that the consequences of this decision would stretch far beyond one royal's role. In a monarchy where silence is currency, her refusal to choose sides spoke volumes. But William wasn't granted the luxury of neutrality. He alone had to carry the weight of execution, even if it meant delivering it to someone who had once confided in him with the trust of a sister. Unable to face her in person, William penned a handwritten apology. The letter, hand-delivered by royal courier, was sealed in wax and never publicly acknowledged. But inside, it's believed he expressed regret, affection, and one haunting truth: "You deserved more than this, but this is all I can give." The finality of that line was William's own silent grief, a goodbye not to Beatrice's family, but to the future they might have shaped together under the same crest. In the royal meeting that followed, his voice did not tremble. He delivered the decision, the icy composure, and those who watched said it was as if something in him had splintered. The monarch he was becoming had consumed the man he once was. And while the palace strategized, behind locked gates, the real explosion was about to erupt, not inside but outside those ancient walls. When news broke, the public didn't bow in understanding. They roared in fury. Social media erupted. Petitions, protests, and viral messages cast the palace into digital chaos. The monarchy underestimated one thing: Beatrice had a loyal following ready to fight. Within 30 minutes of Prince William's official statement, the hashtag Justice for Beatrice stormed across every major platform. It wasn't just trending, it was dominating. What began as stunned disbelief quickly morphed into outrage. The carefully managed image of a modern monarchy crumbled in real time as the public turned their gaze not just toward the palace, but toward the people within it. Suddenly, it wasn't Beatrice who was on trial. It was the firm. Political commentators, many of whom had tread lightly around royal affairs for years, called it what others feared to say out loud: a modern exile, a calculated removal under the guise of protocol. The timing, the wording, the secrecy, it all pointed to a coordinated takedown. And the public wasn't buying the official line. They dissected every word of William's speech, replayed footage of past royal interactions, resurfaced old interviews where Beatrice had spoken of her desire to serve the crown. The narrative the palace had tried to suppress was now weaponable, amplified by millions and growing louder by the hour. Royal watchers, those who had made careers studying the nuances of Windsor behaviour, were among the first to point fingers, and they all pointed in one direction: Camilla's camp. Analysts began presenting timelines showing a sharp decline in Beatrice's visibility following Queen Elizabeth's passing and Camilla's elevation. Patterns emerged, influence shifted, positions were quietly reassigned. Whispers turned to conclusions. This wasn't a coincidence, this was a purge. The monarchy's attempt to streamline itself had come at the expense of one of its most quietly devoted members. And now, the public wanted answers. Then came the leaks. Anonymous palace staff began feeding information to journalists, confirming what many had suspected. Beatrice hadn't rebelled, she had been shut out. Her warnings about mismanagement of charitable funds had been dismissed. Her proposed modern initiatives blocked. One insider described her as too forward-thinking for a backward system. Sympathy poured in, not just from the public, but from unexpected places. Major corporate sponsors, brands long affiliated with royal-backed charities, began pulling their support. Public statements were replaced with silence. Behind that silence was disapproval, and the message was clear: the monarchy had crossed a line. But perhaps the most unexpected twist came from the world of celebrity. Influential voices began rallying behind Beatrice: actors, authors. Even former royals living abroad shared cryptic messages of solidarity. A-list names appeared on open letters calling for her reinstatement. Overnight, Beatrice was no longer just a princess, she had become a symbol of integrity in an institution many now saw as outdated, calculated, and cruel. The palace, once impenetrable, now stood defenseless against a digital rebellion. And through it all, Beatrice remained silent. No interviews, no statements, no reaction. And that silence, instead of weakening her, only strengthened the storm surrounding her name. As the pressure built outside, Beatrice herself had remained silent until now. What she did next would stun even her fiercest critics. She appeared not on palace steps, but in a single dimly lit room. No crown, no protocol, just Beatrice and the truth. Her voice didn't tremble, it pierced through the noise like a sword, and with it she didn't just reclaim her dignity, she rewrote her legacy. After days of deafening speculation, after her name was debated by strangers and dissected by tabloids, Beatrice broke her silence in the most unroyal way possible, a direct message to the people. There were no handlers, no press team, no royal insignia at the corner of the screen. It was just her. Raw, honest, undeniably human, and the world stopped to listen. She didn't lash out, she didn't name names, but every sentence carried the weight of betrayal. Sometimes she said, her gaze steady, "We aren't excluded because we fail. We're excluded because we refuse to fold." The message wasn't aimed at the monarchy by name, but everyone knew exactly who she meant. She made it clear this wasn't a scandal, it was a silencing. And for the first time in years, the royal narrative was no longer controlled by the crown, it was being reclaimed by one of its own. Without ever raising her voice, Beatrice exposed the quiet cruelty of the palace system that had slowly erased her. She didn't need to accuse her absence from royal platforms, had already done that for her. Her message shifted tone as she thanked the public not just for their support, but for seeing her when others refused to. "You didn't need a title to understand who I was. And I didn't need a title to be heard," she said, her words laced with both gratitude and defiance. The outpouring of love and outrage from across the world hadn't gone unnoticed. It gave her strength, but more importantly, it gave her clarity. The royal machine may have closed its doors, but the people had opened theirs. She hinted at future plans not in royal capacity, but in service nonetheless. "There is more than one way to serve, and I intend to continue on my own terms." And then came the most poignant moment, a brief but unmistakable mention of her late grandmother, Queen Elizabeth. Beatrice recalled a private moment in the final months of the Queen's life, one where she was told, "Never let silence define you." It was a line that clung to every syllable that followed, casting the video not as a resignation, but as a revolution in disguise. She ended her message with no bitterness, only resolve. "I will step back from royal duties for now, but I will not disappear. I wasn't born to play a part, I was born to stand." It wasn't just a goodbye, it was a declaration. A soft but thunderous departure from a system that failed to protect one of its own. And as the video spread like wildfire across the globe, it was no longer the monarchy that held the narrative, it was Beatrice. Alone, unfiltered, and finally free from the silence that once surrounded her. But as she stepped away from the palace spotlight, what came next wasn't an end, it was the beginning of a royal reckoning. Beatrice may have bowed out, but the echo of her departure still shakes the halls of Buckingham. Whispers of a growing divide, of future rebels within the royal ranks, and of an institution now at war with itself. Who's next? Who's watching? And more importantly, who will speak out? The air inside the palace is no longer heavy with tradition. It's heavy with suspicion. In the weeks since Beatrice's quiet rebellion, the line between old guard traditionalists and a younger, reform-driven wave has only grown more visible. Courtiers speak in hushed tones about two royal futures diverging, one clinging to control, the other demanding change. The firm is no longer a fortress, it's a fault line cracking under the weight of its own secrecy. Eyes have now turned toward Lady Louise, whose quiet poise and unmistakable moral compass have drawn comparisons to Beatrice. Once considered too young to matter in royal affairs, she now carries a kind of silent influence that doesn't go unnoticed. Then, There's Princess Charlotte, born into a different kind of spotlight, one shaped by Catherine's strategic brilliance and William's calculated legacy. But sources claim Charlotte, even at her age, has become unusually curious about her cousins, particularly Beatrice. Behind the scenes, it's said that she asks questions most wouldn't dare voice. If Beatrice was the first, who's to say she'll be the last? Rumours swirl of a second codicil, one allegedly tied to Eugenie. This time, it's not about removal, but protection. Some insiders claim that in her final days, Queen Elizabeth penned a fallback safeguard for her younger granddaughter. If true, that document could become a lightning rod, especially in the wake of Beatrice's exile. Catherine, too, has remained firmly poised. Her silence since Beatrice's statement has been noted not as apathy, but as strategy. With every passing day, it becomes clearer Catherine is no longer just the stabilizing force beside William. She is the monarchy's quiet center of gravity, calculating every step with queenly foresight. But even with her influence, the blowback has begun. William's approval ratings have dipped, particularly among younger generations. Many now see him not as a modernizer, but as the face of institutional cruelty. And as 2026 unfolds, the monarchy doesn't stand united, it stands exposed. A family caught between the past and what comes next. Between the power it protects and the truth it tries to bury. Because in the palace where loyalty is currency and silence is power, one truth now reigns: Beatrice's departure isn't the end, it's the warning shot. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.